The real daughter had become lost in the countryside and wasn't discovered until many years later. Upon her return, she learned that her family had already accepted another girl, a lively and charming replacement who had seamlessly taken her place in the household. Over the past 15 years, this new girl had fully integrated herself into the family, leaving the real daughter feeling overshadowed and deeply betrayed. Consumed by jealousy, she became determined to find ways to win back her family's love and affection. Tragically, her life was cut short at the age of 23 when she succumbed to late-stage brain cancer. It was only after her death that she came to comprehend the full scope of her tragic life, realizing she had been nothing more than a secondary character in someone else's story. Her brief and challenging existence had served merely as a tool for others. However, in an unexpected twist, she was granted a second chance and was reborn at the age of 17. This time, she was equipped with a unique system designed specifically to assist side characters. Observing her reflection, she noticed the burn scar on her face, a remnant from her sophomore year of high school. Suddenly, the system materialized and informed her that despite her rebirth, her misfortune had not changed. Her future still included threats like cancer and car accidents. Confused, she asked how she could alter her fate. The system explained that she could change her luck by building connections with people blessed with good fortune, allowing her to absorb some of their luck. The system then presented her with a luck bonsai, explaining that as she accumulated luck, the bonsai would grow blades of grass to signify her progress. She asked how many blades of grass were needed to change her destiny, and the system revealed that she would require approximately 500. The sheer number felt insurmountable, and her heart sank. Noticing her distress, the system tried to reassure her, revealing that it had identified individuals with abundant luck for her to connect with. When she reviewed the list, she found several names, though only a few stood out as having significant levels of luck. Among the top individuals were Fu Yangi, the eldest grandson of a wealthy and influential family, Fu Zi, the second grandson, and Jiang Choso, a member of the prestigious Jiang family. All of them were prominent figures at her school. Feeling slightly disheartened, she noted that all the fortunate people on her list were in the international class. However, her spirits lifted when she remembered her recent exam results. She had ranked third in her entire grade, which allowed her to transfer classes freely. Acting decisively, she filled out a transfer application and planned to join the international class the next day. After completing the paperwork, she started packing her clothes into the open suitcase on her floor. Suddenly, there was a sharp knock on her door, followed by a hushed voice. It was Jiao Yuning. He reminded her that Jiao Yuan was being discharged from the hospital that day and questioned why she was hiding in her room. He urged her to come downstairs and apologize to Jiao Yuan, who was already with the rest of the family. A few days earlier, Jiao Yuan had suffered a severe allergic reaction to peanut butter at Hai Yang's family store, an incident that led her family to blame Mingxi's friend, Minji. Zipping her suitcase shut, Mingxi opened the door with a cold expression. She curtly replied that she saw no reason to apologize for something she hadn't done. Noticing her suitcase, Jiao Yuning became visibly distressed and accused her of overreacting to a minor issue. However, Mingxi brushed off his concerns, firmly stating that it was no small matter and demanding that he step aside. Stunned by her uncharacteristically resolute behavior, Jiao Yuning hesitated but eventually moved aside. Mingxi walked downstairs, suitcase in hand, as the family, gathered to welcome Jiao Yuan back, exchanged uneasy glances. With a sorrowful expression, Jiao Yuan approached Mingxi, grasped her hand, and pleaded for reconciliation. She insisted that she didn't hold Mingxi responsible for the incident and begged her to stay. However, Mingxi firmly shook off Xiao Yuan's hand, declaring that Xiao Yuan was only standing in her way. As she passed Xiao Shanai, who was watching the scene unfold with visible irritation, Shanai suggested to the family that they let Mingxi leave. She remarked that if Mingxi wanted to move into the school dorms, there was no point in stopping her. With her suitcase in tow, Mingxi left the Jiao residence. Taking a deep breath as she stepped away, she felt a renewed sense of determination. Putting on a mask, she reassured herself that this time she still had a chance. She vowed never to waste another moment seeking approval from a family that didn't understand her. Confidence surged within her as she reminded herself that she still had time to turn her life around. Meanwhile, a group of students spotted her through a nearby window. Recognizing her, they whispered to each other in surprise, marveling at how she had placed in the top 5 students and was likely planning to transfer into the honors class. Unlike the international class, which was known for its laid-back atmosphere and wealthy students, the honors class consisted of top-performing students focused on academic competitions. In her previous life, rumors had circulated that Mingxue had tried to transfer to the honors class just to be closer to Shenliu, one of the students there. One of the students, Yeo, turned to Shenliu with a teasing grin, suggesting that Jiaoming's hard work to make it into the honors class was solely to be near him. However, Shenliu remained indifferent, calmly working on a circuit board for a small robot. He replied dismissively, noting that as one of the top 5 students in the regular classes, Mingxue had every right to transfer wherever she wanted and that her decisions had nothing to do with him. As Mingxue walked down the hallway, another student joked that the semester was about to get more interesting with her around. Amid the chatter, the system's voice spoke up, reminding Mingxue of how, in her past life, she had been completely consumed with chasing after Shenliu. The system asked if things would be any different this time. Mingxue responded firmly, assuring that her top priority now was her own life, above all else. She then asked if the people whose luck she absorbed would notice any changes in their own fortunes. The system reassured her with a metaphor, explaining that absorbing luck was like connecting to a Wi-Fi hotspot. It wouldn't drain or diminish the good fortune of others. As Mingxue continued down the hallway, she reached the honors class. A sudden hush fell over the room as the students stared at her in confusion. For a moment, Yeo and his classmates wondered aloud if she had walked into the wrong class since the international class was located further down the hall. Ignoring the attention, Mingxue carried her books with quiet determination and entered the international class next door. However, as she stepped inside, a familiar sensation began to creep over her, dizziness, as if she were floating on clouds. It was the same feeling she had experienced in her past life. Back then, she had dismissed it as low blood sugar, but now a new thought struck her. Could this be a symptom of her terminal illness? Her anxious thoughts were interrupted by the system's voice, which reminded her of the deliberate setups in her life that served as clues. The system explained that individuals with high levels of luck were marked by a glowing aura, indicating their significance in helping her change her fate. The brighter the glow, the higher their luck ranking, and her destiny could ultimately depend on connecting with such people. Clutching her books tightly, Mingxue suddenly noticed a faint green glow appear in her vision. The glow grew more intense as her eyes landed on an empty desk nearby. Strangely, no one was seated there. Exhausted yet resolute, she walked to the glowing spot, set her books down, pulled out the chair, and sat down. Breathing deeply, she allowed herself a moment of calm within the radiance of the glow. Mingxue detected a faint herbal aroma, reminiscent of fresh pine. The clean, crisp scent seemed to clear her mind, soothing her discomfort and bringing a sense of peace. Suddenly, a tiny, delicate sprout, no more than a millimeter in size, emerged from the edge of the potted plant in front of her. Despite its minuscule size, the sight filled Mingxue with elation, nearly moving her to tears. Curious, she eagerly asked the system about the tiny plant and why it had appeared so suddenly. The system explained that this was her first success, hinting that she had just absorbed some luck. At that moment, the entire classroom fell silent. Every eye was on Mingxue as a hushed voice broke through the quiet, muttering, "Hey, who are you? No one ever sits there." Turning to her left, Mingxue noticed a boy with short red hair wearing white noise-canceling headphones, casually sleeping at his desk. She instantly recognized him as Fu Yangi, the top name on the high luck list. Addressing the student who had spoken, Mingxue introduced herself as Jiao Mingxue, a transfer student from regular class 6. She then asked why she couldn't sit in that particular seat. The student appeared taken aback and warned her about Fu Yangi, describing him as the prince of the Fu family and notorious for being a school bully. The student implied that anyone who dared sit beside him would inevitably end up being threatened and forced to act as his errand runner. However, Mingxue felt no fear. In fact, she welcomed the idea of running errands for Fu Yangi, knowing that every task she completed could increase her luck value. Ignoring the tension in the room, Mingxue took out a water bottle and calmly stated that there was no other available seat, so she would sit there for now. Her composure left the other students speechless. The commotion stirred Fu Yangi awake. He groggily ran a hand through his hair, muttering in cold irritation about the noise. Reaching into his desk drawer, he grabbed several bottles, likely vitamins, and poured a few pills into his hand. Watching intently, Mingshi seized the moment and picked up the water bottle from his desk, handing it to him. Still half asleep, Fu Yangi accepted it with a groggy thanks and took a sip. Only then did he notice someone sitting beside him. His eyes snapped to her, surprise and irritation flashing across his face. He stood abruptly, towering over her, and demanded to know who she was and why she had taken the seat next to him. With steady resolve, Mingshi reintroduced herself as Xiao Mingshi, a recent transfer from Class 6. The students around them murmured in astonishment, speculating that Mingshi must have a strong attraction to Fu Yangi to defy the unwritten rule about sitting beside him. Sensing their assumptions, Fu Yangi's expression turned awkward as he suppressed the string of curses he had been about to unleash. Still visibly annoyed, he ordered her to move, grumbling that no one ever sat next to him. Mingshi, however, had no intention of giving up the seat. She shifted in her chair, signaling her determination to stay put, clinging to the desk as if her life depended on it. Under her breath, she muttered complaints only to realize, to her horror, that she had said them out loud. The entire classroom fell into stunned silence. Fu Yangi's face flushed as his irritation peaked. He demanded an explanation and was preparing to have her pack up and leave when the homeroom teacher burst into the room, clutching a stack of newspapers and wearing a severe expression. The teacher's eyes immediately locked onto Fu Yangi as he stormed over and slammed the newspapers onto his desk, demanding an explanation. He pointed out the school's strict prohibition against riding motorcycles, especially in groups, and chastised Fu Yangi for blatantly ignoring the rule. Fu Yangi smirked, dismissively retorting that newspapers were outdated and questioning why anyone still read them. Enraged, the teacher ordered Fu Yangi to run 30 laps around the field as punishment, threatening to call his parents if he refused to comply. Just as Fu Yangi prepared to argue back, Mingshi abruptly stood up and offered to run the laps in his place. The international class was left in shock, struggling to process what had just happened. Fu Yangi, compelled by the unexpected turn of events, finally gave Mingshi his full attention. He noticed her slender frame, her pale jade-like skin, and her trembling hands. Though her expression betrayed her fear of running 30 laps, she still stood resolutely, determined to take on the punishment in his stead. Exasperated, the teacher redirected his anger toward Mingshi, declaring that she would not be allowed back in class until she completed the laps. Accepting the challenge with a quick nod, Mingshi dashed out of the room before the teacher could change his mind and further punish Fu Yangi. As she ran, she calculated that this effort could yield a high return in luck, estimating that completing the laps might earn her at least 3 new shoots of luck. Meanwhile, in the back row of the classroom, Kenan could barely hide his amazement. He turned to Fu Yangi and remarked on the extraordinary sight of a girl willing to run 30 laps for him. Fu Yangi, though outwardly conflicted, seemed both pleased and proud. While acknowledging his undeniable charm, he couldn't help but feel uneasy at the thought of letting Mingshi complete such a daunting task on his behalf. Fu Yangi muttered to himself that he would find someone to help Mingshi. Shortly after, one of the boys from the class caught up to her, offering to finish the laps on her behalf. However, Mingshi politely declined, insisting that she could handle it herself. The boy, noticing her unwavering determination and the smile that lit up her face at the thought of her reward, was left speechless. He even pondered aloud whether love really had the power to drive someone to such lengths. When the class ended, the international class couldn't help but tease Fu Yangi about the situation. The boy who had approached Mingshi returned to report that she had refused his help, her happiness apparent as she ran and smiled. Hearing this, Fu Yangi found himself picturing her running with a cheerful expression. Reflecting on her actions, he wondered with a hint of satisfaction if she truly liked him that much, privately musing about the undeniable appeal of his charm. Meanwhile, Jiang Chua, who was at home nursing a cold, overheard the gossip about Fu Yangi. Despite his weakened state, he couldn't help but laugh, which triggered a fit of coughing. Deciding to share his thoughts, he called Fu Yangi, teasing him with skeptical humor. Jiang Chua doubted Mingshi's sincerity, suggesting that perhaps she didn't truly like Fu Yangi but instead wanted something from him. Sarcastically, he asked what Mingshi might actually admire about Fu Yangi: his bad temper, his perpetually sulky expression, his unruly hairstyle, or even his dog-like personality. With a pointed jab, Jiang Chua added that maybe she was just after the Fu family's wealth. Fu Yangi's mood soured instantly. Visibly irritated, he snapped back, telling Jiang Chua that if he couldn't speak decently, he should just stay quiet. Then, in frustration, Fu Yangi abruptly ended the call and threw his phone into his desk drawer. Jiang Chua's remarks lingered in his mind, and Fu Yangi began to convince himself that the transfer student might not genuinely like him after all. Annoyed, he kicked the chair beside him and decided that when Mingshi returned, he would simply offer her money to leave him alone. Meanwhile, Mingshi finally finished the grueling 30 laps, utterly exhausted and in desperate need of rest. Instead of returning to class, she headed straight to her dormitory. After a long rest, she opened her eyes and was shocked to find that her potted plant had sprouted 3 fresh shoots, just as she had hoped. Excited, Mingshi rushed to the bathroom to check her reflection in the mirror. She was astonished to see that the small dark mark on her right cheek had faded significantly. It was now almost invisible unless one looked closely. Elated, Mingshi realized that staying close to Fu Yangi and keeping his favor might help her escape her role as the unfortunate supporting character much faster than she had expected. However, as she considered her next steps, she acknowledged that Fu Yangi was a tough and challenging person to approach, which added to her stress. Reflecting on her skills, she recalled her talent for cooking. Before she had been taken into the Zhao family's care 15 years ago, she had often cooked for her grandmother, who had raised her. Even after moving in with the Zhao family, she had tried to win their favor by preparing her best dishes, although her efforts were rarely appreciated by Zhao's mother. Now, Mingshi decided it was time to live for herself. She planned to use her cooking skills to foster a closer relationship with Fu Yangi. Wondering aloud if cooking for him might help boost her luck, the system eagerly confirmed that any interactions with key characters would increase her luck. Encouraged, she felt a renewed sense of confidence and vowed that her cooking would surely win him over. She resolved to visit Haiyang's shop after school to buy the ingredients she needed. At lunchtime in the school cafeteria, Zhao Yuan and her friend Xiao had already heard about the events of the morning. Zhao Yuning joined them from the first-year area, sitting down to eat while they listened to Xiao recount the story. Both siblings appeared skeptical, dismissing the idea that Mingshi could be genuinely interested in someone new. They assumed she was likely trying to make Shan Liao jealous, as it was well known how much she liked him. Zhao Yuning, barely touching his food, looked visibly unimpressed with the cafeteria meal. Noticing his lack of appetite, Zhao Yuan offered him some meat from her plate. Sighing, she remarked that Mingshi's actions seemed childish and impulsive and that leaving home to stay at school had been a hasty decision. She then asked Yuning if he knew when Mingshi planned to return. Annoyed, Zhao Yuning responded dismissively, saying that Mingshi had pulled similar stunts many times in the past and always came back on her own. Zhao Yuan, attempting to ease his irritation, suggested he speak to her, reminding him that he was the one closest to her. She added that if this didn't work, they could reassure Mingshi that the allergy incident wasn't entirely her fault once she returned. Still irritated, Zhao Yuning refused the suggestion, insisting that he wouldn't reach out this time and advising Zhao Yuan not to either. He explained that he had checked her closet the previous night and noticed that most of the clothes their mother had bought her were still there. To him, this was a clear sign that Mingshi didn't plan on staying away for long. Confident in his assessment, he brushed off the matter entirely. Zhao Yuning predicted that Mingshi would return home on her own within a few days. Despite his outwardly dismissive attitude, he couldn't shake his irritation with the bland cafeteria food. He had grown accustomed to the lunches Mingshi brought from home. No matter how tense things got between them, she had never failed to bring him lunch before. But today, she was absent and had even ignored his call, leaving him wondering where she had gone. Nearby, Salia laughed as she remarked that the rumor about Mingshi's running in circles strategy had already reached their class. She claimed Mingshi was only trying to make Xin Liao jealous, adding that, with the number of girls interested in him, Mingshi didn't stand a chance unless she looked as stunning as the girl sitting beside her. Unable to restrain himself any longer, Zhao Yuning stood up abruptly, pointing at Salia and snapping that she should reflect on herself before criticizing others. Startled by his outburst, Salia quickly apologized, realizing she had overstepped. Zhao Yuan stepped in to defuse the situation, advising Salia to be more considerate before they all returned to their meals. However, Zhao Yuan couldn't stop her thoughts from drifting to Mingshi's appearance. She recalled how Mingxi's striking beauty had captivated their entire family when she first came to live with them 2 years ago. Her bold, sharp features had even outshone Zhao Yuan's own softer, more delicate looks. Although Zhao Yuan's initial insecurities had faded after Mingxi got a scar from an accident a year ago, an underlying unease lingered in her thoughts. Zhao Yuan's reflections were interrupted when Zhao Yuning suddenly uttered Mingxi's name. Both she and Salia turned to see Mingxi entering the cafeteria, her face partially concealed by a disposable mask. Zhao Yuning assumed she had been delayed by the morning's lapse, which explained why she hadn't made it to lunch earlier. Noticing that Mingxi hadn't brought her usual lunchbox, a rare break from her habit, especially after an argument, he felt a pang of guilt. It reminded him of the harsh words he had spoken to her when she left home the previous day, and for a moment, he considered apologizing. However, just as Zhao Yuning worked up the courage to call out to her, Mingxi walked right past him without acknowledging his greeting. Shocked and slightly offended, he wondered if she had ignored him on purpose. As he watched her collect her lunch, their eyes briefly met, but she quickly looked away and went to sit alone in another part of the cafeteria. Not long after, He Yang joined Mingxi, bringing her own meal along with a small dessert from her family shop. She mentioned that her father hadn't stopped talking about the dessert Mingxi had made the previous weekend and offered her one to try. Mingxi's excitement grew, though she decided to save it for later. Back in the classroom, He Yang teased her for being so frugal, though her thoughts wandered to whether sharing the dessert with Fu Yangi might catch his attention. Shifting the conversation, He Yang casually asked if Zhao Yuan's allergy had improved. The question snapped Mingxi back to the present. She explained that she didn't know, as she had recently moved out of the Zhao family home to live in the school dorms. Surprised, He Yang jumped to her feet, expressing disbelief that Mingxi had been made to leave over Zhao Yuan's allergy. She questioned the family's treatment of her. Mingxi quickly urged her friend to lower her voice, clarifying that moving out had been her own decision. Even so, He Yang appeared visibly upset, declaring her suspicion that Zhao Yuan might have orchestrated the situation. She went so far as to claim that she wouldn't be surprised if Zhao Yuan had staged the entire allergy episode. Letting out a tired sigh, Mingxi acknowledged the possibility but added that Zhao Yuan's close friend, Salia, likely played a role as well. He Yang's expression hardened at this, her frustration growing. She remarked that Salia, who had been infatuated with Xinliao from the beginning, often looked at Mingxi as if she were a rival. Mingxi clarified that her thoughts were only speculative and noted that there was nothing unusual in the security footage to prove any wrongdoing. Nevertheless, He Yang, still seething, expressed her certainty that Salia had been involved, citing her jealousy over Mingxi's family's engagement arrangement with Xinliao. She suggested that Mingxi should try to explain the situation to her family, but Mingxi only managed a sardonic smile. She explained that any attempt to clarify her position would likely be futile, especially since the incident had occurred at He Yang's family shop. It would only look suspicious, as though she had staged the event herself. Disheartened, He Yang admitted her frustration but promised not to let the matter go. She vowed to uncover the truth about whoever had been causing trouble. Mingxi began to regret sharing so much and tried to shift the mood. She playfully pinched He Yang's cheek and suggested they move on. Declaring that she was done with the Zhao family, Mingxi steered the conversation toward finding ways to earn money. He Yang's face lit up as she pulled out her phone, eager to share some job leads. She listed several options, including writing essays, performing piano gigs, and even taking exams on behalf of others. Intrigued, Mingxi asked about the exam-taking job and its pay. He Yang nodded, explaining that a wealthy student had recently offered 8,000 yuan for someone to take a test in his place, claiming he was too unwell to attend. Mingxi's eyes widened at the amount, realizing it would be enough to cover an entire semester's expenses. As she looked at the account that posted the job, Handsome Edge, the name struck her as familiar, though she couldn't recall why. Despite the tempting offer, Mingxi admitted to herself that her recent streak of bad luck with tests made the opportunity too risky. She decided to wait until her luck improved before taking on anything so challenging. After lunch, Mingxi and He Yang left the cafeteria, unaware that Xinliao's friends, sitting nearby, had overheard parts of their conversation. Yebua, one of Xinliao's close friends, pieced together enough details to deduce that Zhao Yuan's allergy incident had likely caused Mingxi to move out of the Zhao family home. Watching Mingxi leave, Yebua's curiosity grew, and he glanced at Shan Liao with intrigue. Leaning closer, Yebwa murmured to Shan Liao that Mingshi's sudden transfer to the international class, along with her bold attempt to pursue Fu Yangi, now made sense. Smirking, he suggested that Mingshi's jealousy of Salia might have been a factor. Shan Liao, visibly irritated, brushed off the comment, dismissively asking, "Who even is Salia?" Yebwa reminded him that Salia was the girl who had handed him a water bottle after their second basketball game the previous Friday, while Mingshi had watched from the sidelines, clearly annoyed. Shan Liao seemed to connect the dots, realizing that Mingshi might not have seen him toss the water bottle aside afterward. Yebwa speculated that Mingshi's clash with Zhao Yuan over the weekend had driven her to switch classes, and Shan Liao nodded, agreeing with Yebwa's theory. Meanwhile, Mingshi returned to the international class after the lunch break. The classroom, chilled by the hum of the air conditioning, buzzed with activity as she walked in. She felt the weight of 40 pairs of eyes on her, scrutinizing her every move. Her anxiety only eased when she noticed her books still neatly stacked on the desk beside Fu Yangi's seat, untouched and, thankfully, not in the trash bin. Summoning her composure, Mingshi walked over to her desk. She caught the subtle dry pine scent lingering around Fu Yangi, which felt unexpectedly refreshing and cleared her mind almost instantly. Fu Yangi, with his messy red hair and large silver headphones draped around his neck, shot her a cool, indifferent glance. But as she drew closer, she noticed a shift in his demeanor. Though his sharp gaze exuded confidence, the faint flush in his ears betrayed him. Irritated, Fu Yangi asked what she wanted, his tone laced with annoyance. He reminded her that he had only let her sit next to him earlier because she had run 30 laps on his behalf. He warned her not to get any ideas, emphasizing that he wasn't comfortable with her sitting beside him as a permanent arrangement. Trying to remain composed, Mingshi pointed out that there were no other available seats. Fu Yangi scoffed, remarking that her seating issue wasn't his problem. At that moment, Kenan, a classmate known for his teasing remarks, jumped in, suggesting with a playful smirk that Mingshi didn't need to sit so close to Fu Yangi. He joked that since she had just transferred, she had plenty of time to cozy up to him later. Two other boys, seemingly encouraged by Kenan's comments, moved toward Mingshi's desk, ready to relocate it. Realizing she might lose her chance to remain close to Fu Yangi, Mingshi reacted quickly. She gripped the desk tightly, defiantly declaring that she was staying. When the boys persisted, she went further, draping half her body across the desk in a bold act of defiance. Her audacity left everyone momentarily stunned. Fu Yangi glared at her fiercely, but Mingshi held her ground. Straightening up, she quickly offered a compromise, 2 dessert squares as a trade for staying in her seat. She placed the desserts on his desk, suggesting they were his in exchange for allowing her to remain beside him. Fu Yangi eyed the desserts with feigned disinterest, brushing them off by claiming he didn't care for anything she made. However, the sweet, fluffy aroma wafting from the desserts was impossible to ignore. It hinted that they would taste incredible. Despite himself, he acknowledged her effort and conceded that it was thoughtful of her to remember his fondness for sweets, a definite improvement over the usual attempts others made to gain his attention. Before he realized it, a small grin tugged at his lips as he mused that perhaps Mingshi wasn't interested in him solely for his wealth. Noticing this, Kenan tried to sneak a closer look at the desserts, but Fu Yangi shoved his head away. With a lazy smirk, Fu Yangi declared his acceptance of the treats. Then, in an exaggerated tone, he announced that Mingshi could stay beside him for the rest of the day, but insisted that she find another seat by tomorrow, as he wasn't interested in having her nearby permanently.